In this deadly episode of True 911 Calls, a 16-year-old boy shoots his parents after they confiscate his violent video game. A Sunday morning ends in tragedy. And is a seemingly open and shut accidental death really all it seems? Let's dive in.
What's going on?
I don't know what happened. I just came over to my parents' house because we were going to watch the game. And my mom is shot and my dad is shot. My brother's here.
Does anybody know what happened? Did your brother shoot your parents?
I don't know. This is so... My brother said, don't come in, don't come in.
On October 20th, 2007, Heidi Archer went over to her parents' home in Brighton Township, Ohio with her husband to watch a baseball game and discovered a gruesome crime that would shake the small community to its core. Covered in blood were her parents, Mark and Susan Petric. The pair had been shot, and the killer was attempting to flee in the family's van. Inside the van was the couple's very own son, Daniel Petric. The 16-year-old had grown up in a small community. His father, Mark, was a church pastor at the New Life Assembly of God in Wellington, and the family was seemingly very close-knit. After contracting a staphylococcus infection following a jet ski injury, Daniel became homebound. He quickly grew tired of sitting around watching the world go by. After visiting a friend one day, he was introduced to the Halo franchise, a violent video game set in the 26th century where players battle with alien life in a mixture of blood, gore, and violence. Daniel saw the game as a form of escapism and begged his parents to allow him to buy a copy for himself. Mark and Susan, as upstanding churchgoers, forbade their son from playing, but their words didn't stop him. Daniel would go over to his friend's home for up to 18 hours at a time simply to play the game. When Mark caught him sneaking in the early hours one day, he gave Daniel an ultimatum. Either he quit playing or move out and live with his friend instead. Despite this, the 16-year-old snuck out one day and bought himself a copy of Halo 3. After queuing for hours, anticipating the new game's release, Daniel brought it home, planning to hide his purchase from his parents. Within weeks, Mark and Susan found out their son had gone behind their backs and bought the game. They confiscated the CD, locking it up in a safe next to a 9mm Taurus PT-92 handgun the family owned for protection. Enraged, Daniel couldn't face the idea of life without the game and refused to give it up. Instead, he hatched a plan. On October 20th, 2007, a week after it was locked away, the teen stole his father's key to the safe. Unlocking it, he grabbed the disc for the game and the gun. Daniel crept up behind his parents who were sitting together on the living room sofa. Then, calmly, he told them,
"Hey, Mom and Dad, I have a surprise for you. Will you close your eye?"
It would be the last thing Susan would ever hear. Seconds later, Daniel opened fire, shooting his parents in the back of their heads. As they slumped over, bleeding and groaning on the living room floor, the 16-year-old planted the gun in his father's hand, attempting to stage the scene as a murder-suicide. Minutes later, Heidi, Daniel's sister, and her husband, Andrew, arrived at the home and were met with the killer standing at the front door. Blocking their entrance, Daniel told Heidi, "You guys shouldn't come in." Mom and Dad had a big argument, but hearing groans of pain coming from Mark, Heidi pushed past her brother and walked in on the gruesome scene. Daniel sped away from the home in the family's van, with the Halo 3 game placed next to him on the passenger seat. Police quickly caught up with the vehicle and used roadblocks to force the killer out. As the 16-year-old was arrested, he was heard by police shouting, "My dad shot my mom." But what Daniel didn't know was, Mark survived the attack but was gravely injured and in a coma at the hospital. In custody, Daniel changed his story every time it was retold. Initially, he described to detectives how he had been grounded for buying the game, and the disc had been locked in the safe along with the handgun. The teen went on to say how he had asked his father if he could be ungrounded to hang out at the cinema with friends. Daniel detailed how Mark had told him no, and that the conversation quickly got heated until the next thing he knew, Mark was unloading the safe and had shot his mother, Susan, in the back of the head in anger. Daniel added that Mark had attempted to shoot him, but when the gun didn't work, he realized what he was doing and turned it on himself. The shooter told detectives that he stole the van in an attempt to flee from the house, not knowing if his father was still after him. Of course, with the multiple 911 calls that had been made that night, detectives saw right through his story. Daniel couldn't explain how his fingerprints would end up on the gun if it had been Mark responsible for the shooting, and eventually, he broke down and confessed. 2 weeks passed, and doctors went back and forth over Mark's prognosis until, finally, he was out of the woods. He was going to be okay. On December 15th, 2008, over a year after the murder of his mother and attempted murder of his father, Daniel stood trial at Lorain County Court. He attempted to plead guilty by reason of insanity, with his defense claiming that his addiction to Halo 3 and inability to distinguish the game from real life caused Daniel to commit such a heinous crime. On the other hand, the prosecution proposed that the shooter had carefully planned the attack, finding the key to the safe and knowingly taking the handgun to murder his parents for daring to punish him. Since the attack, the family has forgiven Daniel. Mark visits his son regularly and says that he lives in guilt every day for what he did to his parents. In November 2021, Jack Thompson, a disbarred lawyer from Florida who campaigns against violent video games, wrote a letter to Lorain County Prosecutor J.D. Tomlinson. In it, he argued that Daniel should have his conviction and prison time waived, since his crime resulted from him being addicted to a particularly violent video game which rendered him delusional. Tomlinson argued that the teen deserved a new trial with this in mind. There have been no further updates since a petition was set up to keep him behind bars. After a 2-day trial, Daniel was found guilty of aggravated murder, attempted aggravated murder, and tampering with evidence. He was sentenced to life in prison with a possibility of parole on November 2nd, 2030, when he'll be 39 years old. Next, you'll hear the deadly result of an alleged schizophrenic episode that ended in parricide.
911, what is that? Is someone to see?
I'm at, but my neighbors across the street, son is shooting a gun out in the garage and he is just going.
Okay, are you at?
I'm afraid to go out there because,
Okay, can you just see him from your house?
I can see him from the house, yes. I can see him from the house. I can see him coming in and out.
Black male?
He's a white male.
How many shots have you heard?
At least 9, maybe 10.
Do you know, can you see the gun? What kind of gun is it?
It's a handgun. I know that much.
Just stay on the line. Just stay on the line.
Trust me, I'm staying on the line with. I do not see his father, his name is.
And the guy that's shooting is a white male, you say? How old?
Yeah, his son.
On the morning of Sunday, July 31st, 2022, shortly after 10 a.m., police dispatchers received a call from a concerned resident reporting that he could hear gunshots at his neighbor's house. Telling officers that he could see the resident's son walking around with a gun, the neighbor said that multiple rounds had been fired, and he believed someone had been killed. Minutes later, the son, 21-year-old Kyle Raemisch, called 911 himself.
911, what's the address of the emergency?
My dad was trying to kill me.
Okay, how was he trying to kill you?
With the new money.
With what?
The money. With money.
How is he trying to kill you with money?
You'll see how later.
No. What's going on?
My dad is trying to kill me.
Okay, where is he at?
He's dead now.
Okay, well, what do you mean by that?
He was trying to kill me.
Okay, he was trying to kill you, but now he's dead? What happened? What's your name, honey? Okay, are you home by yourself right now? Where's your dad?
He's here.
Okay, did you do something to him?
Mm-hmm.
What did you do?
I shot him.
Okay, you shot him? Where's the gun at?
It's in my room.
Okay, just stay on the phone with me.
Kyle admitted to the dispatcher that he had killed his father, Christopher or Chris Raemisch, in a dispute over money. Police arrived on the scene minutes later. Once inside, they found 14 spent shell casings on the garage floor alongside a Sig Sauer 9mm semi-automatic handgun that was also found on the property. The garage door was also discovered to have been littered with bullet holes. Kyle was arrested and taken into custody while the community grieved at the loss of Chris. A figurehead, Chris had been serving locals for years as a chiropractor at Ridge Chiropractic Care. Since the case is still ongoing, I don't have all the details as to what happened in the home that fateful Sunday morning yet. Deputies initially released a statement that Kyle will be going to prison for a very long time. They later discussed with the media that they believed Kyle, who allegedly has schizophrenia, had not taken his medication in the days leading up to the murder. According to Sheriff Judd of the Polk County Sheriff's Office, his story tells us, when he doesn't take medication, he has episodes where he thinks people are trying to kill him, specifically his dad being one of them. Regardless of his mental health issues, Sheriff Judd said that Kyle would still be charged and tried.
Whenever you don't take your medication appropriately, when you don't go to your counselors appropriately, then horrible things can happen, and the worst thing happened on this particular occasion.
Kyle remains in Polk County Jail, charged with first-degree murder, and is held without bond. As always, I will update you when new information comes out in this tragic case. The following case takes us across the pond where British Airways pilot Robert Brown calmly called 999 to make an appointment with the police after brutally killing his estranged wife. In 1998, heiress and divorcee Joanna Brown was on the trip of a lifetime in South Africa, where she fell in love with pilot Robert Brown. In a whirlwind romance, the couple married months later, on February 13, 1999. At her father's request, self-made millionaire and property developer Christopher Simpson signed a prenuptial agreement, and the couple soon jetted off on honeymoon together. Within days of the marriage, Robert began displaying controlling, narcissistic behaviors. From his attitude to his new wife to the waiters they encountered on the trip, Joanna began to worry that she'd made a mistake. Putting her fears aside, the couple set up home together in Joanna's large £3 million or $4.8 million in dollars Tudor-style mansion in Ascot. Not long after they moved in, the pair welcomed their first child together in December 1999, a daughter they named Katie. Joanna and Robert went on to have another child, a son they named Alex, 7 months later. It was then that real cracks began to show. Working as a pilot, Robert was often away for days at a time, and Joanna felt isolated and alone, bringing up 2 young children as a de facto single parent. When Robert was home, his fitness obsession kept him away from his family, with him signing up to and competing in events across the country. At breaking point, Joanna told Robert that they needed to attend marriage counseling to stabilize the relationship. Despite his alleged 007 allure, Joanna's family was concerned. She had gone from a bubbly and vivacious character, full of life and outgoing, to a complete shell of herself. Things came to a head in July 2007 when Robert flew into a fit of jealous rage, suspecting that Joanna had been having an affair. In the midst of the fight, he pulled a knife out, threatening his wife and the mother of his children. At that moment, Joanna knew it was time to call it quits. Moving to her mother's in the Isle of Man, Joanna began divorce proceedings, offering Robert a £500,000 settlement for them to avoid any nastiness for the sake of their 2 children. Greedy and feeling slighted at the loss of his wife's fortune, Robert rejected the settlement, and so the battle began. The couple and their lawyers fought over the proceedings through the next few years, but Joanna had the prenup on her side. Finally, on November 8, 2010, a judge ruled that the prenup was valid and Robert was, in fact, entitled to very little. Relieved, Joanna, who had turned her family home into a bed and breakfast in order to make ends meet, breathed a sigh of relief, knowing her family fortune was safe. But she had no idea what was coming next.
10 Valley Place, Nicole speaking.
Yeah, hello. I'd like to make an appointment to come in regarding an incident that occurred yesterday.
Okay. Can I ask what the incident was?
It's of a domestic.
Right. Okay. So you want to make an appointment to speak to someone about it?
Yes.
Okay. Let me take some details from you. The reason I'm asking for that before I can make the appointment is because it is a domestic and our policy.
Well, I mean, it's a serious domestic. If you want.
Yeah. Okay, usually with our domestic policies, what we do is we advise that we losses to 10 within the hour, but if you want to make an appointment instead of that, I can still do that with you.
Say again?
Our policy for domestic incidents is usually for an officer to attend within the hour to discuss this.
Yeah.
Okay, but if you're not able to do that, I can still make an appointment with you.
I mean, I'd rather come up to the police station as I've got 4 children here, and I wouldn't want to.
That's fine. That's not a problem.
To worry them any further. Okay. I mean, I won't. You know.
Yeah. Okay. Let me take some details from you. Okay. Then I will go and try diary and we'll book an appointment with you. Can you just explain to me what the situation is?
Well, I've spoken to my lawyer, and he said not to say anything. So.
Can I ask why he said that?
The incidents of a serious nature.
Right. When you say serious, because I need to highlight this to the officer of how serious it is, and this only lies with me passing it to the officer. Can I ask what it is? How serious?
I really don't want to say anything, actually.
Can I ask why? I mean, this is confidential. This is between me and you.
Well, because it's extremely serious nature, and
I'm assuming it's regarding with your ex-partner.
Yes.
Okay, and the incidents occurred recently.
Yes, last night.
Right, and you're both okay, are you? You're not. None of you are harmed at all, are you?
Well, we have one person.
Right. Okay. Is that person seeking any medical attention? Do you know? Do they need it?
No.
No. And you've got children involved as well?
Yes.
Okay, but they're with you at the moment and they're safe?
Yeah, they're with me and they're safe.
Okay.
My girlfriend's looking after them.
So they live with your girlfriend? Is it your girlfriend that's in this situation? No,
my ex-wife.
Okay, that's fine. So they're all okay, but you want to come and discuss this? Yeah. Right. When you say serious, okay, and I'm only going by assumption, I'm assuming it's something that you have seeked because you're worried about the consequences.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Right. Let me take some details from you. Can I start with your name?
My name is Robert Brown.
On Sunday, October 31st, 2010, Robert spent the day with his children and parents, who had been visiting from Scotland. Later that afternoon, he made his way over to Joanna's to drop the children off. He arrived just after 4 p.m. and almost immediately, a fight ensued between the pair. With his children listening in just 2 doors away, Robert picked up one of their school bags and drew out a hammer that he had carefully hidden inside. Joanna stood no chance. Robert came at her, swinging the weapon, hitting her 14 times in the head. The blows were fatal. Katie and Alex heard the whole thing. After the attack was over, Katie asked her dad if he was going to call an ambulance for Joanna, but he already had a plan. With Joanna dead, Robert packed up his car and headed back to his own home. He forced the children to sit within feet of their mother's body. Once home, Robert hurried Katie and Alex inside with his new partner, Stephanie Bellemere, who had been at Robert's home while the attack took place, and left him there. He then went to a secluded area on the edge of Great Windsor Park, walking until he found a hole he had dug months prior. Joanna was crudely buried inside a crate-turned coffin. When Robert returned home at 5 a.m. the next day, he refused to answer questions about where he had been, instead waiting almost 4 hours to call the police to make an appointment to discuss the crime.
If I'm able to get one today, is that a good time for you?
Say again?
If I'm able to get an appointment for you today, would that be okay for you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Let's have a look. I'm going to put it on hold for 1 moment while I check. I think I've got an appointment here, but I just want to clarify it, if that's okay.
Yes, fine.
Okay, 1 moment. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Thank you for holding. I had a bit of a problem with our diary system. What I'm going to do is give you this reference number, okay? I'm going to ask if you can attend the police station, Bracknell, as soon as you can. What we'll do, we'll get an officer to, you're from Windsor, aren't you?
Yeah.
Attend the Windsor one. I will pass this across to an officer and we'll get someone.
You're going to get an officer to go to the Bracknell. Where is the Bracknell off the station?
We'll get to the Windsor one, sorry. Let me correct it. Yeah, Windsor's your local one, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. We'll get an officer to attend there to meet you, to discuss it.
Right.
Okay, because unfortunately I can't get any appointments for today, but due to what you're telling me, I think we need to speak to you today.
Yeah, I'll come in, don't worry.
Okay.
I'll be there.
Immediately after the phone call was made, police made their way to Joanna's home, but they found it empty with Joanna's keys, phone, and bags still inside. Blood was found in the hallway and up the drive. By 10 a.m. that day, Robert had been arrested on suspicion of murder. He gave a statement to police that he had fought with Joanna the day before, killing her and disposing of her body in Great Windsor Park in a pre-dug hole. Officers went with Robert twice to try and locate the spot where Joanna had been buried, but both times turned up nothing. On Friday, November 5th, 2010, almost a week later, police discovered the crate and Joanna. A team of archaeologists was brought in and found that the crate had been placed in the hole for over a year before the murder. Robert had seemingly planned the killing in the full knowledge that if the divorce didn't go his way, he would attack. During the trial, Robert Brown pleaded guilty to manslaughter by reason of diminished responsibility, claiming that he had been suffering from adjustment disorder and couldn't remember murdering his wife. Despite the evidence of the crate being buried months before displaying clear premeditation, he was cleared of murder. Robert was sentenced to 26 years in prison. Since Joanna's murder, a foundation has been set up in her name, which aims to support the children affected by domestic abuse. In the final call, was a sudden accidental death really all it seemed?
What is your emergency? My mother, I don't know if she's breathing, but she's laying on the ground in the shower. Okay. Okay? So you don't know if she's breathing? I don't know if she's... Is she unconscious? I don't know. I need to go over there and see if she's okay. Okay. How do you know she's down there? My dad's over there. He's over there. Can you go to her now and just meet him? I need to put you on hold. It's like a house call. Oh my God, he was going everywhere. We're going to get somebody started. Ma'am. Oh my God, my mother.
On the morning of September 17th, 2012, 23-year-old Jenna Neulander woke up to her worst nightmare. With her father, Robert, screaming out for help, Jenna found herself in the main bedroom of her parents' large home in Syracuse, New York. Her mother, 61-year-old Leslie, had seemingly slipped in the shower and suffered a fatal blow. Paramedics arrived on the scene within minutes, but there was nothing they could do. Leslie was pronounced dead. Grieving their sudden loss, the family was angry when New York police badgered them with questions. Blood was found spattered on the wall and pooled on a rug, and officers struggled to understand why. According to Robert, after discovering his wife was bleeding in the shower, he carried her from the bathroom into the bedroom to attempt to resuscitate her. But that didn't explain the pattern of blood. With alarm bells ringing, police were forced to put their reservations aside when medical examiners ruled Leslie's death a tragic accident. She had simply slipped in the shower. Robert, a well-regarded gynecologist and obstetrician, was supported by friends, family, and the wider community as they all reeled after Leslie's sudden death. But in the following months, rumors began to circulate. Whispers and hushed conversations took place behind closed doors, speculating that Leslie and Robert's outwardly perfect marriage wasn't all it seemed, with financial issues caused by Robert's failing practice to blame. Whispers became accusations, and eventually, the couple's close friend and retired pathologist, Mary Jumblick, found herself at the center of a would-be witch hunt against Robert. Except it wasn't. Mary listened to the concerns people had against her longtime friend, and with her training as a forensic scientist, she knew she couldn't stay silent. Instead, she called DA Bill Fitzpatrick and relayed the information she had collected, telling him that she believed there was more to Leslie's death than a simple fall in the shower. To Mary's surprise, Fitzpatrick told her she wasn't the first to come to this. In fact, he had received an anonymous letter days before telling him the same thing. Mary proposed to Fitzpatrick that she come out of retirement for free to take a look at the case, and as soon as she read Leslie's autopsy report, she knew a grave error had been made. Leslie had died from a penetrating wound at the back of her head, so severe that Mary had only seen similar injuries in car accidents or fallen from over 20 stories. Shutting the file, Mary immediately went back to Fitzpatrick with her findings. Leslie had been murdered. The case was reopened and police began investigating Robert, who initially cooperated. Robert told detectives how he and Leslie had indeed been having marital issues and, at the time of her death, were sleeping separately. He relayed his version of what happened on September 17th, telling detectives how that morning he had gone for a run and, once home, had made Leslie a cup of tea, placing it on the table next to the bed while she showered. Robert told detectives how an hour later, he grew concerned when Leslie hadn't reemerged and went to the bathroom to check she was okay. Here he found her lying on the floor, blood everywhere. He then called for his daughter, who was in her room, to help resuscitate his wife, carrying her into the bedroom. But detectives had their own theory. They believed that an enraged Robert had chased Leslie through the house, set on killing her. Leslie ran for her life until, eventually, she was cornered and struck. Detectives speculated that the woman had struggled hard, and after her death, Robert moved her body to account for the amount of blood spread across the room. Investigators spoke to the Neulanders' housekeeper, who told them that the bedsheets had been changed on the day of Leslie's death, leading them to believe that she had died before Robert had gone on his run, with him disposing of the sheets and murder weapon once out of the home. The medical examiner was presented with the new evidence and statements by detectives, and finally, Leslie's cause of death was officially changed. She had been murdered. After a grand jury indictment on June 23, 2014, Robert was charged with his wife's murder. In March 2015, his trial began. Despite retaining some of the best attorneys and the continued support of his children, who could not believe he could do such a thing, the evidence was against him. A unanimous guilty verdict came on July 30, 2015, and Robert was found guilty of killing Leslie Neulander and was sentenced to 20 years to life. But that isn't the end of it. 3 years later, in 2018, Robert's verdict was reversed after a juror was found guilty of misconduct during his trial. He was released on bail, and a new trial was awarded in October 2019. But of course, COVID swept the world shortly after, and Robert's second trial was postponed until 2022. In March, he was again found guilty of killing Leslie Neulander after just 6 hours of jury deliberation. He was sentenced to 20 years to life, with credit for the previous 3 years he had served. In a case that was closed so quickly initially, Leslie finally got justice, and Robert remains behind bars. For more True 911 calls, watch this episode next.